Welcome to episode 35 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Taylor Carr, Millwright Apprentice at Karma Inc. Karma Inc. is the largest producer of candy canes in Canada. They provide a range of hard candy in candy canes, sticks, and lollipops, as well as a wide range of chocolate technologies, including shell, solid, drop, hollow, and enrobed confectionaries. On this episode, Taylor talked to me about her journey to becoming a fully licensed millwright mechanic and what she does at Karma Candy, and the fun treats that they make there. I always found the journey to becoming a millwright mechanic confusing, but Taylor broke it down for me and made it so much more simple for me to understand. I am so happy to be able to share this episode with everyone because you can tell that Taylor really loves what she does. Taylor also gives some really great advice in the episode that students should take no matter what position they're in and any step in their journey. I'll let Taylor tell you exactly what that is. So, enough with that introduction. Let's get on with the show. Thank you, Taylor, for taking the time to come to talk with me about your journey that you're currently in. I'm really excited to learn more about it. Like I said prior to a little chat, is that it's hard to find people who are in your role who actually will come out and talk about it because you guys are kind of underground, I find, when it comes to talking. So thanks for coming on the show.
No problem.
So, Taylor, to get us started, would you be able to tell me a little bit about what you do and where you work?
So I'm a Millwright Apprentice and I work at a company called Karma Candy. My day-to-day duties are changing over machines when we're switching over from products to new ones and just making sure that all of our lines are operating properly. Like if there's a jam or something, I'll clear it, or if an operator's having any issues, I'll fix whatever's going on.
Okay. Okay. With Karma Candy, you say like you change the line. So what kind of candy is pretty broad? What kind of candies do they make?
We mainly make candy canes. We're actually the only candy cane manufacturer in all of Canada.
Oh, wow.
We make candy canes 9 months out of the year, and at the most, we make 8 million a week.
That's insane. Oh my gosh. Wow. So it's a pretty good assumption if you're buying candy canes in Canada that you're buying Karma Candy. So
That's correct.
okay. And when you say like changing out the lines, so would that mean like different sizes or different shapes? Well, candy canes are kind of canes, but you know what I mean.
In terms of candy canes, they're pretty standard in terms of size. We do make some bigger sizes like 28 grams and 36 grams. But when I'm talking about changeovers, it's normally to do with our chocolate lines. We make things such as peppermint patties and chocolate hearts and stuff like that. So we'd have to change over the depositors that deposit the chocolate to set them up for different things, and we'd have to set up the machines that foil them as well.
Okay, so wow, okay, so it involves chocolate, so that's like a whole see, and that's why I was curious because chocolate's such a unique confectionery compared to other sugary treats. It's totally different than candy. I could imagine that there's a lot of where do I want to go with this? But I could so it would be like changing out the different mold shapes and those types of things?
Yes, exactly. Depending on what molds we're using, we have to change how much chocolate's coming out of the machine, and we also have to adjust the timing of the machine as well.
I have done research in a chocolate lab, so it's kind of up my alley when it comes to things chocolate. And I could imagine it's a very temperamental type of product to work with.
It can be.
Yeah, I could imagine. So, one of the things that I was curious about is how did you become aware? We've kind of jumped over the fact that, if I'm correct, you're becoming a millwright, but you're currently an apprentice right now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, how did you become interested in this type of role?
It's actually a pretty funny story if you'll allow me a bit of a backstory.
I would love to hear a backstory. I'm all game.
So when I was in high school, I had injured my knee playing rugby, and I had originally signed up to take a musical theater class. And I got kicked out of that class because I couldn't dance because I just had knee surgery. And the only class I could get into was automotive. And like I had never thought of taking a shop class ever. And then I ended up taking it. I was like a kid on crutches in the shop, but it was the only class I could get into, and the shop teacher was really great about it, and I actually loved it. So then I started taking all the shop classes, and I ended up doing a co-op in heavy equipment after that. And then that made me decide that I wanted to be a millwright because it's similar to heavy equipment, like a heavy equipment mechanic position, but there's just so much more variety.
So what do you mean by a variety?
There's more variety in terms of what you can work on. Like, so in terms of my career so far, for maintenance, I've worked at 4 different companies. I've worked on like conveyors, pumps, compressors. Like now I work in a candy factory. Like you can just go anywhere with that ticket.
Wow. See, I love your story about how it just kind of happened. You weren't looking for it, which I think, to be honest, is some of the best stories. But it's too bad that high schools kind of just divert us into one area. And you never, once you hit a certain year, you don't really get that chance to go back and explore something. Cause like I could have been like you for all I know and just stumbled into a class doing what you were. And who knows where my career would have taken me from just that like one random moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the variety that you've worked, I was just curious about what intrigued you into stepping into a candy role.
Actually, it's another funny story of how things fall into place. Actually, so I purchased a house close by. And when I went to look at the house, I saw that there was a candy factory close by. It's only a couple blocks away from me. And so I said, when I saw that house, I want that house and I want to work there. So
Oh,
I found out that there was a job opening there, and I ended up getting in. But also, when I worked as a contractor for Atlas Copco, I got to travel all over the GTA and other parts of Ontario. And I really liked going into food production facilities because it's just so clean.
yes, very true. I was curious about because you've decided to stick with this route, what are some of the things that you enjoy about your job?
I mean, overall, it's just a really great place to work. It's a great company. The people there are amazing, which always really helps the whole environment. I don't know, it's gonna sound cheesy, but I just love going into a place that makes candy. It always smells so good, and I get to learn about all the new products that are coming out, and it's just really great to work for a company that makes so many people happy all the time.
No, hey, as cheesy as it is, I love that. It's so true when I mean, I think that's one of the reasons as well why people like to work in the food industry in general, because at the end of the day, you're feeding people, and there's just something like, especially confectioners, there's just something like really special about knowing that you're making food that just makes people happy. Especially
Yeah,
candy canes. I mean, they're like the perfect addition to Christmas, and it wouldn't be Christmas without candy canes.
exactly.
Well, I love that. I want to take a step back, and I know how you kind of got into this role from your story, but I have found the entire pathway of becoming an apprentice really confusing. And maybe I'm totally wrong about this, but would you be able to tell me about how you became a millwright mechanic?
Okay, so personally, I found that the easiest way was that so I took a mechanical engineering technician program through Fanta College. So that exempt me from my level one schooling of being a millwright, and I just found it was easier to get a job as an apprentice after taking a program like that. So then what I did was I applied for millwright apprentice jobs because you have to find a company to sponsor you for you to be an apprentice. And once I found a company to sponsor me, then I applied to be an apprentice. And then I had to apply through the Ontario College of Trades and pay my fee and everything to be registered as an apprentice. And then once you're hired on and that all goes through, then you have to fill out what's called, I think it's an apprenticeship agreement or a sponsor agreement. And so your sponsor has to sign it as well as your journeyman. And I believe in terms of ratios, you're allowed one apprentice to a journeyman right now. It might have changed over
Okay.
the years, but you have to work under a fully licensed millwright in order to apprentice.
Okay. So does that mean where you work right now, you have someone that you apprentice under specifically?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, the way you say it, it doesn't sound as complicated as it seems like when I'm like doing research on it.
Well, it can be pretty hectic trying to figure it all out and fill it out on your own, but once after you get your initial sponsorship, and then if you switch over, like, to another company, you know exactly what to do, and it's kinda easy.
Oh, okay. So it's really about just kind of making the decision and then getting your foot in the door with that first position. And I'm assuming this is where being the person that you apprentice under would really help you and make sure, like, guide you.
Yeah, over the course of your apprenticeship, you get, like, a book of tasks that you have to do from the Ontario College of Trades, and your journeyman has to sign off on those tasks for you. So you have to complete that book as well as your 3 levels of schooling, and then it used to be based on hours for millwrights, but now it's based on being competent. So once you're deemed competent and you finished your 3 levels of schooling and you finished all the tasks, then you can get a letter from your employer saying that you're competent and that you can write your exam.
Oh, wow, that's a big change actually, switching over from the hours.
Yeah,
Hmm. I wonder if it has to do with the shortage.
maybe.
Maybe. Once you have the full certification, does that allow someone to just go to different provinces in Canada, or would that still limit you to only working in Ontario?
Once you have your red seal, you can work all over Canada.
Well, that's really awesome. See, that's a really good kind of skill job that you really can be utilized no matter where you go across the country.
Exactly.
You're doing your checklist right now and working on competency. What are some of the skills that you've been working on in order to get to that level?
Um, I guess, like, in terms of skills that I've been working on, I've had to, like, work on my machining skills and my welding skills. It's all a part of the apprenticeship.
Sorry, I'm just like thinking back to when you were talking about what you actually do in your role. And I guess you're one of the things that factories like is to have that go to person that can really address everything about the machine in order to be able to, like, you're the expert at that point. Well, you're working to be, I should say.
Yes, you're working to be. Like, I told you we do a lot of changeovers and stuff like that at my work. I told you that we run candy canes 9 months out of the year, but when we're not running those machines, we rebuild them all. So it really gives you a chance to get to know the machine and to eventually be an expert.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. It's nice to have that little, because I know for most food factories that a lot of preparation goes into the major holidays, especially for candy. The big ones are like Easter, Christmas, Halloween, but you don't start that like if Halloween's in October, you don't start it in September. Like it's already getting started back in like August, for example. So it's really cool to know that your company has that ability to take the time to make sure everything is working smoothly and that you get that opportunity to really see the nuts and bolts of everything.
Exactly.
So, one of the other things that we talked about the Ontario, about the, oh gosh, the name's slipping my mind, the Ontario Trade School, correct?
The Ontario College of Trades.
Thank you.
You're
I was
welcome.
just curious, is there any other places besides there that you seek support, or is there groups? Because I guess I'm just thinking along the lines of maybe someone comes out of this episode and they were interested to know more about this profession or something like that. Is there any like support groups or associations that you're a part of or you're aware of?
So the The two, I guess, that I would recommend would be OYAP, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. You can reach out to them, I believe, and they can help you, as well as I believe it's called the Ministry of Advanced Skills and Education. That's actually where you have to register your apprenticeship agreement, and then they work kind of hand in hand with the Ontario College of Trades. So if you have any questions about apprenticeships, that would be the place that I would go.
Okay, that's good to know because that's another thing. There's so many different places that someone can look online when it comes to the trades that, again, I think it could be a little overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
mhm. I know that out of high school, you kind of got interested in it. Was there a lot of like options in terms of deciding on a college that you like? What made you decide to go to Fanshawe?
I decided to go to Fanshawe. It was like an off it was like a smaller campus, I guess like a satellite campus,
Okay.
and it was close to where I was living at the time. So it was just really convenient to commute there, and they had a few other programs at the facility there. So that just made my decision really easy.
Awesome.
It was only like a half an hour commute, so
Oh, I'm jealous. I commute into Toronto every day, and on paper it seems so close, but then all the hustle to go back and you got to take the bus to the train station, then you got to take the train to school, and then you got to take the bus. It's just a whole thing. So yeah, it's awesome that you're able to you've had experiences where it worked for you. And that's a great thing about colleges as well is that there's so many different places you can go, but the hands-on training. And I'm assuming that it was a mixture of co-op and in-class learning, correct?
for my program, well, it was there was theory and then there was the practical side of it. We didn't actually do co-op after we were done the course, but we had so much practical experience in the class that I would say we didn't really need it, honestly.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of classrooms set up, not like literal classrooms, but places to like work on the physical skills. Like, did you ever like practice welding, for example?
Yeah, actually, so I did one welding course in my mechanical engineering technician program, and 70% of it was just in the shop practicing welding. For our pneumatics and hydraulics course, we we probably spent about 50% of the time out in the lab hooking up circuits, pneumatic circuits, and figuring out how they work it practically, which was great. That was one of my favorite courses. And then for electrical, we got to learn how to wire up circuits and stuff like that.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, I don't know why that's surprising me, but to also incorporate those things because you could attest to this that factories to now are not just bolts and lines and all that. Like, there's a lot of electronics and PLCs that are involved. And for those who might not know, I guess the best way to talk about PLCs is it's almost like the software, so to say, for the equipment.
Yeah, PLCs are programmable logic controllers, and yes, they control the equipment. It's definitely changed the industry.
For sure, and see, that's someone I'd love to get on the podcast in the future as well because, automation is becoming it's so important now in manufacturing, and they need people who can help with the times and like understand it, but then they also need it paired with individuals like you who actually get the machines going, working properly, and continue to work properly. I'm going to start moving towards the end goal. And I wanted to just, maybe have like a more personal question just for fun. I was curious if there was any people who have been influential to you in either your career journey or just in general.
I would say like I didn't grow up with like parents in the trade or anything, but my mom was extremely hardworking when I was growing up. Like she worked 3 jobs at one point in order to support us. I've always really looked up to her work ethic, and that made me really want to go out and get a good career, a good job. And so she really pushed me to do that. My dad's also very inspiring to me too. Like, he's actually blind. He has lupus and colitis, and he was like a Paralympic athlete. So it's just he's also very inspiring to me because he's suffering with so much, and he still goes out and just does his thing.
That's so great. It's always great when you can have, I asked you who's an influential person to you, and you could have been naming off like people and TV and all these famous people, but to to have your family as that source of inspiration, and I can just only imagine how you look up to them just with based on just how you just talked, and it's it's good to have someone to look up to who's just, like, around the corner, so
Exactly.
well, for us, maybe we can take a little bit of inspiration from you. I like to ask our guests, what's one piece of advice you would give to a student or graduate who's looking to have a similar role to you or start in the same career path as you?
I would say, like, if they're out there looking for jobs in a similar career path, don't hesitate to apply to a job, even if it says that they're looking for a fully licensed millwright. Like, there is a shortage of millwrights out there, and they might look at your resume and decide that they want to hire you. For my first maintenance job, they were looking for a fully licensed millwright, and I had no experience, and they hired me. They should always try. They should always try to put themselves out there and try to better themselves and better their career.
That's great advice. I mean, I feel like with a lot of these job postings, especially to what you're doing right now, to just go out and apply to something that says, be fully licensed. I wouldn't if I was in their position, I probably just would be like, yeah, they don't want me, and I probably wouldn't apply. So it's interesting to hear straight from you that it actually worked for you and you're not just giving out this advice just to throw it out there, but it's worked for you.
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, we've already been recording and we got straight to the point. We got the answers that I was hoping that we could share with the audience. And I'm so grateful for you taking the time to come and talk with me on the show. I think that there has to be more of a spotlight put on roles like what you're doing and seeing, just how exciting it can be to do a job. You just love helping to make candy, something that's really fun like that. So thanks for coming on the show and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was episode 35 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads homepage by clicking on the podcast tab. There, you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself, or maybe a specific career path that you would like to explore a little more? Then reach out to me and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. I hope to hear from you. I really enjoyed this conversation with Taylor because becoming a millwright was a career path that I never considered at high school. Perhaps if I had a story like Taylor's, or maybe if I was introduced to it in another way, I would have seriously considered going into it. It seems as though the path to becoming a millwright isn't as confusing as I would have thought, or at least it isn't here in Ontario. So if you are interested in this field, then go check it out. I know they are always looking for mere people. Who knows, maybe you might fall in love with it like Taylor did. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.